I was a child standing in the basement of a church, not a stranger's church, my uncle's church, a place that was supposed to represent safety, spiritual authority. You know, the true essence of the house of God. The one place where a child should feel protected above anywhere else. And my uncle, the one man who carried spiritual authority in my family, decided that on that particular Sunday, that he was going to pull me aside, look me directly in my eyes, and proceed to tell me I wouldn't be nothing in life. Yeah, it was in that moment something broke in me. Something happened that I wouldn't understand for years. And that something is that the family womb and the faith womb would merge into one experience. You see, for me being that young and hearing that, it wasn't just a man's opinion anymore. I believe that it carried the weight of God's house along with it. In my adolescent mind, the unspoken message was even this place agrees with the verdict, right? Even God's house isn't going to protect me from what my family has decided what I was going to be. Now, I'm going to tell you more about that particular moment on tonight. But first, I need to talk about why I believe it happened and why it continues to happen, but not just to me, to all of us in different shapes and different forms. Because what happened to me in that basement is simply a specific version of something that happens in families across the world. Every generation without anyone really stopping to question it. So while you try to pick up everything I just put down, I want to welcome you to the 4th episode of the Family Arc, where on tonight, we're going to be talking about the one thing that makes everything we've covered up to this point make sense. What are you talking about, Sean? I'm talking about generational trauma. That's what we're going to be discussing. We're going to be talking about what it actually is, how it actually moves, and why the lie you tell yourself about being fine is the exact mechanism that keeps it alive. Think about it. We'll be right back. Hello, and welcome to another episode of This Could Get Ugly. Of course, I am your host, Mr. Sean D. Upshaw, and as always, I appreciate you for tuning in on tonight as we discuss another epic topic, in my opinion, about family. The topic we're going to be discussing tonight is the most expensive lie we have been telling ourselves up to this point. I turned out fine. Yeah, I turned out fine. That is one of the most expensive lies, in my opinion, that we have been telling ourselves up until this point from a child, and just things we just haven't addressed from that point to this point. But before we get into that, I encourage you to head over to our YouTube page, right? And what I want you to do when you get there is I want you to subscribe. Like every video you see that's already there, and be ready to receive clarity. If you're looking for a channel that gets in depth about things concerning life, concerning family, concerning relationships, concerning dating, this is the show for you. We believe in interrupting patterns. We believe in exposing patterns, and more importantly, we believe in transforming those into becoming the individual that we set out to be. So let's get started. Sean, what is generational trauma? That's a great question, right? One thing that I've seen is generational trauma has become a buzzword. And I'm not going to lie to you. It really pisses me off, right? People throw this word around on social media like it's a personality trait, when in reality, it's not a hashtag. It's not anything that these people are explaining to you. In fact, it bothers the hell out of me how people have explained generational trauma, because I don't believe they go deep enough concerning this particular topic, right? But what it is it's a mechanism. It's the actual process by which unresolved pain, unexamined behaviors, and unhealed wounds get passed from one generation to the next. And of course, it's not through genetics alone, right? It's through modeling, through environment, and of course, through stories that families tell about itself. I want you to understand that generational trauma travels through channels. Let me explain. I got 3 channels in which generational trauma traveled through. Hear me out. Channel 1, behavioral modeling. This is where you learn how to be a person by watching who raised you. That's very simple, right? Nothing controversial about that. In fact, it's just developmental science, if you ask me. Basically, what I'm saying is your parents' style, conflict style becomes our conflict style or your conflict style. Their emotional range becomes our emotional range. And we just simply consider it normal, right? And on top of that, their coping mechanisms becomes ours. What I mean is, whether it's avoidance, aggression, substance use, emotional shutdown, or over control, what happens is those tools become the tools or the very tools that's in our toolbox as adults because we never addressed them. And I want you to know that we didn't choose them. That's been the motto, the mantra I've been telling you since we started this family arc episodes. We didn't choose any of this, right? But simply because these were the only tools that was given to us in the house that we was raised in, we have no choice but to use them, right? So channel 1, as I said, behavioral modeling. Let's go to channel 2, emotional climate. This is where the emotional temperature of your childhood home has calibrated your nervous system. Now, how did I reach that conclusion? I'll be the first to tell you, through a lot of studying. Through a lot of studying. I'm just going to be real. Emotional temperature is it's crazy, man. I'm telling you, the deeper you go into this, the more you understand that the temperature of your childhood really calibrates your nervous system at this particular juncture in life, right? For example, if your home was volatile, right, your nervous system is calibrated for crisis. What happens next? Well, if it's calibrated for crisis, what do you think happens? Well, we automatically become hypervigilant. What are you saying, Sean? I mean that we begin to read rooms before we even walk into them. We anticipate conflict before it arrives. And people will love to label us as anxious. The people who do this will love to label us as anxious, like it's a chemical imbalance. When the truth is, our anxiety was an adaptation that kept us safe in an unsafe environment. The unsafe environment that I'm speaking of is the one in which we grew up in, right? The problem with that is our body is still running a program that made sense when we were 7 years old, but makes absolutely no sense at the current age we are, whether we're 30 or 25, 20, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, so forth and so on. Let me give you another example. If your home was emotionally dead, flatline, no warmth, no expressed feelings, your nervous system is calibrated for numbness. I can attest to this. How many of you can attest to this? Calibrated for numbness. What that means is you struggle to access your own emotions. Now, I would love to believe that I'm the only one that went through this because I'm a special guy. I believe I'm a special guy. But if we're being honest with ourselves, so many of us have went through this. So many of us are numb right now. Matter of fact, I'll even take it a step further and say we are paralyzed when certain situations arise and we don't know how to really handle them, right? We struggle to access our own emotions. We struggle to respond to our partner's emotions as well. And people gonna do what people do. They're gonna label it as detached simply because we can't express it. But the truth of the matter is, we learn early in the game that feelings or having feelings is pointless because nobody is going to respond to those feelings in the manner in which we need them to respond to them. That's just what happens. Let's talk about channel 3, narrative protection. Now, see, this is the one cycle that keeps everything locked and in place. What I want you to know is every family, which I said last week, every family is a system, but every family has a story that it protects. And that story, I hate to say it, is really more important to the family system than the truth. Don't believe me? Let me give you some examples of what's said by families. We're strong. We're a strong family. We handle things ourselves. We don't air our dirty laundry. We're blessed. Then the famous, I turned out fine. Yeah, that's what we tell ourselves. Excuse me. These narratives serve one purpose and one purpose only: to prevent examination. Because here's the thing: if you begin to examine the family history honestly, thoroughly, and with intention, if you begin to name the abuse, the neglect, the dysfunction, the pain that was passed down, then the narrative collapses. And when the narrative collapses, what happens is the family identity gets threatened. Everything that's put out there gets threatened. So what happens is the system punishes anyone who threatens the story. That's why the person, if you ever notice, that's why the person who goes to therapy is labeled the dramatic one. That's why the one person who begins to set boundaries is viewed as disrespectful. And that's why the one person who says what happened in the family was not okay gets treated like a traitor. See, one thing you need to understand is the family doesn't protect its members. The family protects its story. And the members protect the family by never questioning it. One thing I need you to know is generational trauma doesn't need your permission to travel. It just needs your silence. I want that to sit with you for a second. I want you to sit with that for a second. Because all the episodes concerning the family arc up to this point, I've told you we've inherited. But let me give you the deepest inheritance that I learned. And we talked about this briefly in episode 2, but now we can really bring things together. Remember, I said this is the episode that brings everything together and make it make sense. Now, I opened this episode in a church basement, and I did that deliberately because what I want to talk about now is something most people in this particular space won't touch, refuse to touch it. And I understand why. Trust me, I get it. Because it's personal. It's sacred, damn near. or considered sacred. And it's the one area where people feel most justified in saying, nah, I'm not going to question that. But thank God I'm not most people. And you should be thankful that I'm not most people. So what are you talking about, Sean? I'm talking about faith. Specifically, what happens when your family doesn't introduce you to God, but assigns you a God. Let me be very, very clear about the distinction, because it really matters that you get this and understand where I'm going with this. Being introduced to God sounds totally different than being assigned to a God. Let me give you an example. Being introduced to God sounds like, here's what we believe. Here's why it matters to us. And as you grow, you will develop your own relationship with faith. That's an invitation, ladies and gentlemen. That is what builds foundation while leaving room for individuals to build their own structure on top of it. Now, let me give you the flip side. The flip side is when you're assigned a God, it sounds like this. This is what we believe. This is what you believe. And if you question it, it is disobedience. And if you step outside of this, you're not only wrong, you're rebellion against God and this family. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's not an invitation. That's just plain coercion. And I'm going to be real. It doesn't develop faith in the right way. All it does is develop compliance. I need you to really understand that. It doesn't develop faith when you are assigned to God. It's develop compliance. Now, here's why this particular subject belongs in this episode about generational trauma. In my opinion, forced religious identity is one of the clearest examples of how patterns transfer across generations without anyone ever examining it. You don't believe me? Well, your grandparents imposed their version of faith on your parents. And in turn, your parents did the same thing to you. And at no point in this chain did anyone stop and ask the one question or the two questions. Is this specific expression of faith that I'm passing down actually serving the next generation? Or am I simply preserving my own comfort by making sure everyone believes what I believe? That's a reality. Now here's a story. Told you at the top of the episode that my uncle in his church basement did some crazy stuff to me. Now, I believe in naming my devils. This is my mother's brother. I might get some phone calls for this, but I really don't give a hot damn. My Uncle George really pulled me in the basement of his church at a young age and really told me I wasn't going to be nothing in life. Now, that's the way I took it, but what he really said is I wasn't going to amount to anything in life. And as I said, that moment just didn't damage, at that point, my relationship with my uncle. It really just merged a family womb and a faith womb into one experience. Because when a family member tells you that you're going to never amount to anything in life, I mean, let's just be honest. That's some painful shit. It is. It is what it is. You all up in your feelings. And on top of that, when they do it in God's house, the message changes. It stops being one person's opinion and it starts actually carrying some spiritual authority with it. And that's what I mean when I say the God I was given wasn't the one I necessarily chosen in the beginning. You see, the God of my childhood was associated with the same people who were tearing me down. Now, I don't know if that's happening to you or it happened to you, this is my story, and I hope my story can help you to see if it's happening to you. I believe that at that time that the church wasn't a refuge from my family's dysfunction. In fact, it was an extension of it. The authority figures in my family and the authority figures in the church were one and the same people to me. I'm just going to be honest with you. And in my opinion, they carried the same energy into both spaces. I didn't see any different. I'm just going to be completely honest about this situation. So back in the day when people would tell me to go to church because that's where you would find your peace, I mean, I would totally understand why they were saying it, but the truth of the matter is that church wasn't peace for me then, just due to what had happened to me in the association of church. In my opinion, it was just another room where someone with authority had the permission to tell me who I was, who gave me my identity. And I also believe that I had to sit there quietly and accept it. Now, whose fault was that? I would love to say that it was my fault, but I'm only saying it was my fault because I didn't know any better. It wasn't until I started to do the work that I understood that, yeah, I had to separate some things. And one of the key things that I had to separate is God from the people who claimed to represent him. Same thing you should be doing. If you have, experienced this exact thing that I've experienced. You see, I had to separate that, and I also had to understand that my uncle's words in that basement was not God's words. In fact, they were man's words. And to put the icing on the cake, a wounded man's words, carrying his own unresolved pain, projecting it onto me, a child, in the one place that I was supposed to feel safe. Another reality. But I'm going to be real. That separation that I learned to do between the God I was assigned and the God I chose to seek was one of the hardest and most important things I've done for myself throughout my 45 years of living on this earth. Because until I made that separation, every time I would walk into a church, I walked into that church as a child version of myself and not an adult version of myself. And the truth of the matter is, I was waiting for someone in authority to confirm that I was nothing. I mean, at this point, thank God I've came a long way, right? Because if I didn't, I don't believe that we would be having this particular conversation. So that's what it did to me as an individual, just as an individual. But I have to tell you how it shows up in relationships, right? Because this is what this show is about. It's about individualism. It's about relationships. It's about dating. It's about family patterns. So yeah, we're touching on all of it. It's coming in due time. If you were waiting, this is what it does, right? When you're assigned to God, this is how the assigned God shows up in relationships. You see, the version of God you were given, it doesn't really stay in the church. As I said, it follows you into every relationship. And I'm talking about not just regular relationship. I'm talking about platonic relationships as well, because the model of God your parents gave you or that you learned or picked up, it's also the model of authority, love, and what devotion is supposed to cost, right? For example, if God was molded as authoritarian, a God who actually punishes disobedience, demands performance, and withhold love conditionally, what you absorbed is that what you absorb is a template for every authority relationship in your life. You either became the one person who controls because that is what leadership looked like to you, or you became the one who submits to control because that's what love under authority feels like to you. Now, if God was modeled as transactional, here's what happens, or here's what you believe. You do the right things, you're blessed. This is an important one because there's so many people that believe this. If you do the right things, you're blessed. If you step outside the line, then you suffer. That's what happens when God is molded as transactional. And the crazy part is you brought that economy into your relationships. You perform for love, you keep the score, or we keep the score, because I'm guilty of this as well. And you believe that if you sacrifice enough, you give enough, you serve enough, you'll earn the love you want. And the sad reality is when it doesn't come true, you don't even question the model, right? You question your worthiness. That's the problem. That's the problem. So finally, if God was molded as sacrifice, now, if you followed this series up to this point, then you know what I'm about to say is coming strictly from experience, because I've already given you my love model before I changed it into what it currently is now. So if you molded God as sacrifice, then you learn that love means emptying yourself. You learn that love means emptying yourself. That devotion is measured by depletion. That the person who gives the most is the most righteous. Damn, I swear, when you sit back and think about some of this stuff, well, I can't speak for you guys. When I sit back and think about some of this stuff, as I write it down to give to you on a weekly basis, I can't help but say that this was wild. And for someone, if someone had the opportunity to come just sit in my brain for a minute and understand what goes on in it, I don't think they'd make it out of it. I'm just going to be real with you. I don't think they'd make it out of it. But like I said, you become the person who gives the most, and you believe that makes you the most righteous. And what happens is you carry this into relationship. And I talked about this in episode 2. You give financially when it doesn't make sense. You give physically when your body is telling you to stop. You give emotionally when you have nothing left. And it's because you believe that holding back or holding anything within is selfish. And you also believe that selfishness is a sin. This is exactly what happens when a God is assigned to you versus you establishing the relationship you need to establish with God. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that's not faith. It's not faith at all. That's really a womb wearing faith clothing. And it's also not a representation of God. It's a false representative being sent in the name of God. Now, this episode is not meant to be spiritual, but I'm going to be real. God is a part of me. I got lost for a minute, but God is a part of me. It just so happened I'm not a Bible thumper. I'm not going to tell you how to live, but I will tell you the things that I believe concerning God and how I believe it has gotten me to this specific place in life where I'm able to sit down and have this type of conversation with you and have it while healing. Remember, because I believe, and you should be believing by now, that healing is an ongoing thing, which is why you need ing at the end of that. If you hear anybody that say they are healed, you run your ass the opposite way, because they're just simply waiting on a trigger to trigger them and prove just how not healed they are. So remember that. If you take nothing away from this episode, take away that healing is an ongoing process, and it only deserves an ing at the end of it. Because if you're healed, then you and I are no longer here. The job is complete. We're dead, no breath in our body. That's my opinion. I'm not going to argue with it. I'm not going to argue with you about it. You can give me your version of why you think I'm wrong, but I'm still going to stand 10 toes down on what I believe concerning healing. Okay, soapbox back under the bed. Like I said, that's a representative being sent, but it's not of God. And the reality is, until you separate, like I did, until you distinguish between a genuine relationship with God and a programmed response to an assigned God, you will keep building. You will keep building relationships on a foundation designed for obedience and not partnership, which is what relationships are designed for. Partnership. Pull me on any podcast, pull me on any live, pull me in any discussion, and I'm going to stand on a relationship, standing on partnership rather than anything else. Period. I want you to understand, and I want you to take away that there is a difference between being introduced to God and being assigned a God. One builds faith, the other builds compliance. In compliance, as I said, dressed up as faith, will wreck every relationship it touches. And I'm just not talking about romantic relationships, platonic relationships, associates, however you want to label it, it's going to ruin it. Believe me, you. Now let's get to the most expensive lie that we tell ourselves. The whole purpose of this episode. Let's dissect it. Because now I believe you're in a position to understand why I say it's the most expensive lie. Because see, now you have context, right? So we've spent 3.5 episodes seeing how patterns were installed in you, from communication to love to roles to faith. Because I say 3.5 because we're still in the 4th episode, right? I don't want people to think I can't count. But I want you to understand, like I say, none of it's chosen. All of it is inherited. I will say that until it is beaten into your brain. We chose none of this. It was inherited. And I believe if you haven't started the work or chose to begin some type of process, that is still running your life right now. And if you don't believe me, check this out. What happens when someone suggests that your childhood might have affected you? What do you do? What happens when someone asks you to consider therapy? What is your response? You mind telling me? What when someone points out a pattern in your behavior that kind of resembles your parents' behavior, what's the first thing that comes out of your mouth? Can we be real about that? What's the first thing that comes out of your mouth? I tell you what it is. You say, well, if it is modeling my parents' behavior, I turned out fine. But let me tell you what I turned out fine actually means. It's a couple things, but here are 3 key things that it means. I turned out fine means I merely survived. I turned out fine means I merely survived. That's it. That's all. It means that you made it through adulthood. You have a job, you paid bills, you function. 3 things. You have a job, you pay bills, you function. Well, congratulations. Congratulations. You should be happy. This is back-to-back weeks where I give you a standing ovation for doing something. But here's the thing. Functioning is not flourishing. And the fact that you can hold a job doesn't mean you can hold a relationship. The fact that you can pay bills doesn't mean you know how to be emotionally available. The fact that you're alive doesn't mean you're living, and doesn't mean that you're living with any depth and any connection. And in honesty, that's what it boils down to. It's very simple. But furthermore, I turned out fine means don't make me look at this. Because looking at it is quite painful. Admitting that the people who love you or had your best interests at heart caused you damage. That's a tough pill to swallow because it means holding two truths at once. What are you saying? I'm saying admitting that your parents did love you, but also admitting that your parents hurt you in the process of loving you. Most people can't hold that. So what they do is they collapse it into one. And how they collapse it into one is said they tell themselves that although their parents did damage them or hurt them, that they love them. Therefore, they're fine. But basically what you're doing is burying the hurt. But more importantly, continuing the cycle. Last but not least, I turned out fine means, and this is the most serious one that I really need you to take into consideration. If you don't listen to the first two, at least listen to this third one because it's extremely important. Saying that I turned out fine means I'm going to do the exact damn thing to my children. And that's the real cost. Because when you refuse to examine what was done to you, when you refuse to examine what was done to you, you guarantee that you will pass it forward. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but inevitably. I can't even get that out. But you're going to pass it along, basically. Because I'm going to be real with you. An unexamined pattern don't disappear. It simply replicates. And one thing I learned is I need to stop writing down so many damn big words in one sentence. And so I won't be stumbling over my words doing a lie. Lesson learned. Seriously, though. Unexamined patterns don't disappear, they replicate. Now, here's a question I want you to sit with. If you believe that you really turned out fine, why are you struggling in the same areas that your parents struggled in? Why does your conflict style look exactly like theirs? More significantly, why does your love life mirror theirs? Can you answer those questions? How about you answer this question? Why does your children's teacher call you about the same behaviors that your teacher called your parents about? You ever thought about something like that? I mean, my mind goes that deep. I'm sure some of my teachers have called my mom and it sounded like maybe she was listening to a damn recorder because I'm sure some of my actions sounded exactly like the ones she used to do. I bet. So in reality, we didn't turn out fine. If you can't answer these questions, we didn't turn out fine. What happens is we turned out familiar. And the problem is you're so used to familiar that you mistaken it for being fine or saying that you're fine. Now, here's the thing. We all realize that generational trauma is a continuous cycle. 1. 2, we realize that I always present the problem, but I always present the solution. So breaking the cycle requires some things. It requires some things. Let me tell you what it requires. Because I want you to understand you're not just changing the behavior, you're defying an entire system that was built to perpetrate itself. Let me repeat that. I want you to understand that you are not just changing behavior, you are defying an entire system that was built to perpetrate itself. Let me tell you what it actually requires. Requirement 1. And I want you to understand that every solution I give you, it might sound different in every episode, but I guarantee if you've been listening to every episode, it's pretty much the same thing when you break it down. Requirement 1, radical honesty about your family. Now, when I say give radical honesty about your family, I'm not saying blame them. I'm not saying be angry as a lifestyle. In fact, honesty, to the ability to say, my parents did their best and their best still caused damage, says that both things can be true. I want you to know that refusing to hold both is what keeps this cycle alive. I also want you to know that the work is what actually lives in the middle. This is where love and accountability coexist. Requirement 2, the willingness to be the uncomfortable one. Now, here's a thing that I've learned by doing this, and here's the thing I want you to know if you decide to go down this road. When you start doing the work, when you start setting boundaries, expressing yourself, questioning inherited beliefs, going to therapy, parenting differently, your family, hell, some even, maybe even some of your friends will not celebrate you, not all of them. Some will feel judged by your growth. Some will interpret your boundaries as rejection. Some will say you've changed as if it's an accusation. But my advice to you is let them. Let them do what they do. Because, see, your job is not to make everyone comfortable. More importantly, your job is not to make everyone comfortable with your healing. Your job is to heal and to simply make a decision to continue to heal daily. Make a choice. And I'm going to be real. If your growth makes someone uncomfortable, that discomfort belongs to them, not you. Requirement 3, building new models from scratch. Now, I want you to know you just can't remove the inherited model that you've been carrying for a majority of your life. You have to replace it. That means consciously defining in your own words, from your own values, how you will communicate in conflict, what love will look like going forward, what role will you play in your family? By choice, not by assignment. Those are the 3 things you need to realize. Because what happens is when you decide or make a decision to do those things, welcome to freedom. Welcome to freedom. But let's not forget the most important thing, right? You need to also decide what your relationship with faith will be based on. Your own seeking, not someone else's mandate. That's that separation that we were talking about earlier. You need to define it. You need to get into that. You need to jump into that head first. A change gonna come, as Sam Cooke say. For my old school music listeners, a change has to come. Because you see, episode by episode, this is what we've been building toward, whether you realize it or not. We have been building towards a conscious model to replace the inherited one that I've been trying to tell you exists within you. And I want you to understand that the inherited one wasn't given to you with bad intentions, right? It just simply was given without examination. And the sad part is everything that's unexamined will eventually take control of you. Requirement 4, doing this in your relationship, not just in your head. I want you to understand that this particular cycle, although I am an advocate for therapy, it doesn't break in therapy alone. It breaks actually in practice. Like I told you, waking up every day, making a decision to say, I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to be like this anymore. Hell, I'll even jump out on a limb and say, if you need help, find a way to get in contact with me. I'll do the best I can to get you over the hill. We'll do it together. For real. We'll do it together. Like I said, It breaks in practice. In the moment where you feel yourself about to go silent, speak instead. Basically, just do the opposite. The opposite of what you're used to doing. That's what it boils down to. Like I said, if you feel yourself about to go silent in your relationship, speak instead. In the moments where your partner triggers something old, you respond to them, not to your parents. Don't let that go over your head. In the moment where you want to overgive because your programming says that's how you prove love, you hold back, but not out of selfishness, right? You hold back because that symbolizes you respect yourself in the relationship that you're building. I want you to understand that breaking the cycle is not just the moment, ladies and gentlemen. It's a practice. It's a daily discipline. It's choosing consciousness over comfort, choosing consciousness over comfort over and over and over again until the new pattern is stronger than the inherited one. I want you to understand that breaking a generational cycle means choosing consciousness over comfort every single day until the new pattern is stronger than the old one. Yes, I will keep repeating that shit until it's in your head and in your heart. For real. Now, I want to close this episode by telling you what I'm breaking. Because I've spent 4 episodes asking you to do hard work, and I owe you the same honesty. So I constantly tell you what I do on a daily basis by waking up and choosing, making a decision to say, I don't want to be this person anymore. I want to be free. I want to be free in my decision making. I want to be free in the way I give love. I want to be free in the way I think. I want to be free of judgment, people's opinion. I want to be free of that. A friend of mine told me this. I'm not going to give you a story. Well, I'm not going to give you a story about this, but I'm going to tell you something, a piece of advice that a friend of mine has given to me. A friend of mine once said to me, Sean, you and I, and I'm sure other people that you come in contact with that share the same mentality as you, need to understand that we are generational curse breakers. We are generational curse breakers. We've made the decision to stop the buck here. What happens when you become a generational curse breaker is people are not going to like you. People are going to label you certain things. People are going to just shun you. Family, friends, whatever the case may be, doesn't matter of the longevity of the relationship, friendship, family, it doesn't matter. The moment you decide to become a generational curse breaker becomes the moment you decided to stand and stand strong until this situation is corrected. So to all my generational curse breakers, I want you to understand that keep doing what you're doing. It's going to pay off. I want you to understand that that's been your plan since birth. I want you to understand that you are not alone in this. What you need to do is find a way to get with other generational curse breakers and break this damn curse, because it's been holding us captive for too damn long. We have been detouring from our life's plan for far too long. And you have to make a decision tonight, right now, that shit stops right now. I know some of you wake up every day and you do the same routine. And while you're doing the same routine, you feel something within here that tells you this is not what you're supposed to be doing, but you just keep going because you know that you have bills to pay. You know that routine is what's keeping you comfortable. You know this, but at the end of the day, you're not settled. That could be a sign that you are one of the generational curse breakers, and you need to leave the side of comfort and not let another generational curse pass through to your child, to their child, and you need to stop it right here and right now. As I said in the beginning, if you're very serious about preventing this from continuing, but you don't know how, inbox me, email me, reach out to me. I don't care how you do it, because I'm dead ass serious about stopping the buck here. I have a daughter. I don't want her experiencing nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing I went through. I want her to get out here and contribute to society in a massive way, free of people's opinion, free of people's judgment, free of everything. I just want her to be her, which is why I imparted in her the importance of understanding your identity up front. That way, it doesn't matter who likes her. Whoever don't like her, I tell her all the time, we used to have these affirmations. What people don't like about you is their problem. But what you don't like about yourself is yours. Simple, yet powerful. And I see how effective it is with my daughter. These are just some of the things that I want to pass down to her. Because if she's going to get an inheritance, she's going to get a good one that benefits her. And it just doesn't stop with her. It continues with whatever family that she gets into when she gets grown enough. Now, I'm not standing here saying that I'm someone who's finished. I'm standing here as someone who's conscious. And when you're conscious, you're dangerous. Because you see, consciousness is where the cycle breaks, not in completion, not in perfection. As I said, in the daily, unglamorous decision to do it differently than it was done to you. That's what it is. That's what I'm asking of you. Not to be healed, not to be whole, not to have it all figured out, but just to be honest. Honest about what you inherited, honest about what it's costing you, and honest about whether you saying I turned out fine is the truth. Or is it simply a shield? Now, before I close, I'm going to invite you, as I did in the beginning of the show, if you haven't already, head over to the YouTube channel. It's www.tcgu.podcast.com. Head over there, subscribe for clarity. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a show for transformation. I'm not trying to say anything that goes viral, but if it goes viral, then cool. But my concentration is on transformation. And I will continuously speak on subjects that produce transformation until I'm blue in the face and I don't give a hot damn who has a problem with it. Because these are some key issues that is holding us back. And we really, really need to discuss it. Because I'm going to be real with you. When I started this podcast close to 2 months ago, and I started out with dating, it was all good. It was all fun. I was giving you some structure about dating. But here's the thing. Some people didn't understand that structure. Some people didn't understand why I was saying it that way. And the reason I did dating first is to show you why it's not happening now. If you're not in position to do what I was asking you to do in Arc 1, it's because Arc 2 has some roots that needs to be addressed, which is why we had this family roots arc. Because you need to understand how your family affects your decision making, not only in life, but in relationships with everything going forward. This shit is serious. Some people have it rooted deep here, deep down in here, and it stays in here. Where my generational curse breakers at? Can we stand up? Can we do that? So like I said, in closing, I want you to know that each and every episode that we spoke on, it goes back to that house that we was raised in. From episode 1 to now, I mean, we've examined the silence that was installed, the love that was modeled, the role that was assigned, and on tonight, the cycle that carried all of it forward in the lie of saying, I turned out fine, that protects it. Our next episode, I know some of you are happy, but our next episode will be our last episode on this family roots arc. It would be the last one in the arc. But I'm here to tell you, next week it would be the most personal one I've ever recorded. Now, I want you to know that this podcast won't get as personal about myself as it is now in the beginning stages. And I did it that way because I wanted to establish my voice. I wanted you to know who you're listening to, so you can understand the passion, that you can understand that I'm truly here to get it right. I'm truly here to establish a new contract between us and the life that we deserve. This is my job. This is my purpose, and I stand in it. And I'm going to be real. I found out my purpose once I separated that assigned God from the God that I was able to choose. Just saying, if you haven't found your purpose yet, you might want to check if God was assigned to you. Just saying. So, as I said, next episode will be my most personal one. And what we're going to be talking about is the most targeted wound in the family system. And this one is reserved for a specific person, right? The one they call the black sheep. Now, how many of us have a black sheep? Hell, how many of us are the black sheep of the family? I don't know. I mean, over the years, probably things have changed. But at one point, I was the black sheep of the family. And I want to talk about, because I know that womb and I know it all too well, because I lived it, as I said. I was the one they said wouldn't amount to anything. Just told you that. The one whose boldness was labeled as an attitude. Same uncle used to always say I had a nasty attitude. And the ones who had questions and labeled it as defiance by people who couldn't answer it. That was me. I always had questions. I get that from my mama. Anybody who know my mama know my mom is a question person. She has a million questions, but I guarantee she will tell you, if I ever bring her on this podcast, all the questions she asks, nobody ever answered them, and they label her as defiant or nosy. I call her nosy, but I'm playing with her. I'm just joking with her. But I guarantee she's been given both of those labels. So here's the thing. Whose ever presence threatened the story of the family, this is going to be your episode next week. I'm going to basically tell you how I went from being the black sheep of my family to the goat of my own. I'll see you there. Thanks for tuning in.